ANC has promised to create 2.5 million work opportunities through public procurement programs. In his address to thousands of supporters at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in KwaZulu-Natal on Saturday, the ANC's leader promised his party would tackle the high unemployment rate. Well, let's unpack this further with reaction from Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster, deputy leader of Build One South Africa. Appreciate your time, Nobuntu. Thanks so much for coming onto the show. Now, I want to start off with the feasibility and past performance. Now, given the ANC's previous pledge to create jobs and the current unemployment rate, how realistic is that target of 2.5 million job opportunities?
Thank you for having us, and good afternoon, Hugo. Watching that manifesto launch was just proof again that the ANC is hell-bent on making promises, on making commitments, on a very revisionist kind of narrative about the previous performance. You listened to a president who was speaking in a city which is in and of itself dilapidated, a city which is governed by the ANC. It is dilapidated. It is a city where there's Transnet around the corner from that Moses Mabhida Stadium, where we know that there has been serious challenges which have cost the economy billions, as one of the ports there that has had serious backlog and other challenges recently. You sit in a city that has high crime rates, which obviously is not enabling for investment into the city, of the growth of business or the creation of jobs. And you hear the kind of promises which President Ramaphosa was making yesterday. Just 5 years ago, there was a promise from the same president to create 2 million jobs in 10 years. It's 5 years on. And instead, we had Minister Ramaphosa say that 800,000 jobs were lost last year just because of load shedding. And this is due to businesses closing down. So given the past performance of the ANC, given that the president himself 5 years ago was saying that unemployment among young people being at 50% was a national crisis, but that's grown to almost 70% under his watch, shows that the ANC is not capable of delivering on the promise of job creation. The ANC is not capable of delivering on employment for this country.
Well, you speak of issues of capabilities. You also talked about load shedding. And in the manifesto, analysts have argued that the president just left, I think, a line or two to talk about the issue of electricity in Eskom. And surely a huge amount of time, or certainly effort, should have been given to addressing the challenges with Eskom and electricity.
Absolutely. I mean, the president spoke about issues of supporting small enterprises. He spoke about industrialization and reindustrialization. He spoke about exports, increasing export in the country. And you cannot speak about any of that. He spoke about investing in infrastructure. You cannot speak about any of that without addressing the challenge that is Eskom in this country. You cannot industrialize an economy without energy. You cannot start to build on the promises that had been made by this government way back from 2015 of black industrialization as well. Without energy, the businesses that exist now that are in the manufacturing sector, which he also mentioned, are struggling because of the energy crisis that we have. And like I said, the Minister of Electricity himself conceded that 800,000 jobs were lost due to load shedding. He conceded this last year. And so when you have those kinds of commitments and promises, but are not able to draw on how do you then ensure that this is possible by ensuring that the energy crisis is attended to, by ensuring that that is turned around and that there is energy supply for the economy because it's a driver of the economy, then it shows that it's clear that, first of all, the plans and the promises and commitments that have been made about addressing that issue have failed. And he's reluctant to once again make those commitments because they simply are not going to be able to meet them.
Well, I'll go back to the issue around jobs for a little bit. And, a few weeks ago, the DA talked about 2 million jobs. The ANC now is talking about 2.5 million job opportunities. You yourselves have spoken out about a job in every home. So it certainly is the common thread amongst a number of political parties that have given the election manifestos. So where do you feel that the ANC is getting it wrong as far as the jobs is concerned? Because that number, the 2 million mark, seems to be common amongst a number of political parties.
So the first is you have to speak about SOEs as an economic driver. And SOEs under the ANC government, we have seen them crumble. We have seen what has happened with Transnet, We have seen what has happened with even Denel. We've seen what has happened with Eskom, and that should be an economic driver. So when the ANC speak about creating opportunities for delivering public goods and services, this is something that they failed to do, given the unemployment that we see now, but also given that even as it pertains to state-owned enterprises which deliver on public goods and services, they have run those down themselves. It's something that we understand that these are the entities that generate electricity, that manage ports, that build the roads. But when you look at some of these entities that have been under their watch and that have been mismanaged under their watch, you cannot expect that same government to then be able to do that by creating opportunities to deliver public goods and services, as the president said. They've been hollowed out over the years by looting, by maladministration, and we've seen just general mismanagement, and which has left a lot of them bankrupt, and even failing to pay staff salaries. So how can you say you are going to create jobs when you have in the past, even with state-owned enterprises, failed to even pay staff salaries and become so dependent on government bailouts?
Now, how will the ANC prioritize job creation for marginalized groups such as women, youth and persons with disabilities, as mentioned in the manifesto? I mean, do you see strategies in place to address the unique challenges faced by these demographics in accessing employment?
So there have been commitments by the president to commit, for instance, to 40% of procurement by government when it pertains to women-owned businesses. And we have not seen that. Reports have shown that has been at less than 10%. And that's why I keep saying it was a frustrating manifesto to hear and to watch. It's been similar to the SOPAs, it's similar to SONA, to the budget speech, because it's commitments and promises that are just simply not delivered upon. They speak of supporting small enterprises in townships and villages. How do you do that when there's no infrastructure development in those areas? How do you do that? I was in Limpopo this past couple of days, and the vast majority of Limpopo, you see the roads that are gravel roads. There's no water. There's no electricity. How are you planning to be able to build small businesses in townships and villages when you can't take care of the basic infrastructure? As it stands now, the World Bank estimates that the SMME credit gap in South Africa is as high as 500 billion. There are state agencies, government agencies that have been set to fund SMMEs, and the government has failed to do this adequately. We've seen a lot of cronyism as it pertains to funding businesses and funding SMMEs. And so, we have red tape. We had a red tape unit that was put in place by this administration that was supposed to attend to the issues of SMMEs, to the inhibitors of growth for SMMEs, and we have not seen progress in that. We still have that legislation in place that still has red tape for SMMEs. So these are really frustrating things to listen to, because the ANC simply has not prioritized SMMEs. They've not prioritized women-owned and youth-owned businesses as their promises. And when we say that we commit to 2 million jobs, our focus, first of all, is ensuring that as a BOSA government, we create an enabling environment. We make sure that education and skills are attended to in the way that they should. We ensure that the funds that are supposed to be used by SMMEs to be able to stimulate township economies are directed accordingly. A lot of this has to do with corruption, and we simply can't ignore that you have a government that is corrupt, that is not able to even now be able to attend to issues of their own ministers who sit in cabinet today, their own officials who sit in cabinets today, who have been found to be corrupt as well.
Well, the ANC has been singing the same tune largely for the last 30 years. So this particular election does give BOSA and certainly other political parties an opportunity, in that South Africa's economics is at its worst. How are you likely to convince the electorate to support you, or certainly for other political parties to support them, when the inadequacies are so glowing?
So, the first thing is that people are tired of promises. and I will keep harping on this, that manifesto is a array of over 30 commitments and promises that the ANC has failed to do. They've come and they've shown up like they're a new party, whereas they've been in government for 30 years and have failed on that. So South Africans are tired of promises. We as BOSA have been a government in working. So when we speak about a jobs plan, when we outline and table what we will do in terms of supporting SMMEs in townships, in rural communities, we have started to do that. We have an SMME desk that is working to support SMMEs. We have been able to work with other organizations in giving seed capital to businesses that need it and helping with access to market. We have done other work, installing boreholes in communities where there's no water, because you come into communities and there's communities that have cooperatives that even want to do agricultural work, that want to do farming and can't do so because they don't have water. So we are a government in working, and we started doing the work, and so communities believe in the work that we're doing because we have started doing it. Secondly, it's important that we have leaders that are in communities. So our model has been that our leaders are from communities, they are chosen by communities, they are trusted by communities, they are credible leaders which have shown care from the communities, and they come from communities. You can't be removed from a community when you as the leaders live in that community. And so that's what's the difference. We have leaders that people identify with and know and that they can hold accountable, whereas we've sat with a government that is far removed from the realities of people and from people, and so has been difficult to hold to account even for their failures in governance.
Now, I'd imagine that you've had numerous conversations with the electorate around the governance of the ANC. And one of the things that's been apparent over the last several years is corruption within the ANC government. Now, the fact that the ANC is still the ruling party would almost suggest that it's one of those things that the people, the electorate, do not hold the ANC to account. What are the sort of impressions that you're getting on the ground?
You know, I think sometimes we underestimate the electorate. The electorate is very clear about where the ANC has taken this country. The electorate is very clear about the issues of corruption that plague this country because of the ANC. You speak to the electorate and they're able to see the discrepancies between how they live, what their realities are, when they don't have jobs, when the schools that their children are in don't have the infrastructure, when children are sitting in classrooms with 60, 70 learners in a classroom, and they understand that a corrupt government that it continues to be corrupt because they're shielded from all of that. The electorate is angry, rightfully so, and the electorate is very clear that this is a corrupt government that has stolen from them and that has stolen from their future. For instance, you have a government that has allowed for the perks of ministers and the president to stay throughout these 5 years, when we've had COVID as a pandemic, when we've had high interest rates that citizens have suffered. You have ministers that have continued to have electricity when the rest of the country has got to live with not having electricity in their homes and in their businesses, even in schools and other public areas of basic service delivery. And so the electorate is clear about it. They are clear about a corrupt government. They are clear that the government has not been able to have enough arrests of the people who have stolen and looted from the country. And so we have an electorate that's ready for change. We have an electorate that's ready to change this government, despite what you may have seen in that stadium with people that had been busted, with people that are incentivized to be there. The reality is when you are on the ground and you speak to South Africans, they understand where we're at, and that the cause for that is the ANC government.
Nobuntu, appreciate your time this afternoon. That was Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster, Deputy Leader of Build One South Africa, unpacking for us that election manifesto by the ANC. A reminder